Welcome back, David. It's so good to be back again.
Yes.
So we have a good show coming up. We're going to be interviewing Council President Michael Farina. He's the Council President of the Cranston City Council. Going to get a little behind the scenes of what it's like to be a councilman, also what they go through, how they generate laws, how they make laws and ordinances, and what it takes. And we're going to learn about that. I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy, like I told you before. And we're looking forward to it, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Don't change the channel. Hello, welcome to this very special segment. Today we have a very special guest. With me is Michael Farina. How you doing, Michael?
Good, David. How are you?
Doing well. Michael, some of you may already know, is the council president here in the city of Cranston. Today we're going to have a nice little chat with Council President Farina and ask of him what is it like to be council president, but more so, how does the mechanics of city government work? But before we do that, we want to also get to know the person.
It's funny, I ended up going through finance to merchandising to negotiations to strategy, but the fact that I have a business background and was very strongly, firmly represented with finance and economics, it kind of helped me kind of be a five-tool person. Okay. I was thinking about being an accountant for a long time.
Okay.
Met with a few accountants and realized that if I became an accountant, odds are, no, I'd be just an accountant. Like I could do accounting. Yep, and I wanted to just do more things that had like strategic focus.
Okay.
So it was neat.
Now, public service, when does that happen to you?
It's funny, in 2010, I had a pothole at my house. And I called the then council person and I said, hey, I bought this house 2 years ago and I have this grate in front of my house. It's a catch basin and it's sinking and I need someone to fix it. And he never responded. And then I called the city and I kind of got the runaround. They came out and looked at it and I'm like, no, this is sinking and the street needs to be paved and the lights need to be updated and the garbage system doesn't work. And then the guy said, well, I can't fix it. You should run for council. So I did. And I ran the first election. I ran in 2010 as a citywide city councilman. Unfortunately, I came in 4th out of 6. I missed it by that much.
Oh, wow.
I was not deterred. I ran again in 2012, and I came in 1st, and then I was on the council.
Beautiful.
And I will have been on the council at the end of this term for 8 years, my 4th term now.
Now, at the time, did you represent the ward?
I went right citywide.
You've been right, oh wow, so you've always been citywide.
I've always been a citywide councilman, so the 4 terms I've been on citywide and the one I ran before this one was citywide.
So for those folks out there that don't understand the difference of representing a ward and citywide, what are the distinct differences?
The city is broken up into 6 specific wards. So if you think about Edgewood is Ward 1, Eden Park is Ward 2, the Dyer Ave corridor that we're in now is Ward 3, Ward 4 is most of your Western Cranston, Ward 5 is Knightsville, and then Ward 6 is the Garden City area. Now there's other surrounding areas, but those are the kind of the hearts of the wards. And there are 6 council people that represent each of those wards. And then you have 3 citywide council people that represent the entire city. So I've been a citywide council the entire 4 years, 4 terms I've been on the council.
Wow. Now, as far as the power structure within the city council and city government, does a citywide council person have more power than just a ward council person?
No, it just means we need more votes.
You need more votes.
So in reality, once the election's over, every council person has 1 vote. So the power structure is equal.
Equal.
And every council person, if they're doing their job, will represent the needs of their wards effectively. And usually if something is good for Cranston, all 6 wards and all 3 citywide people will agree that it's good for Cranston.
Sure. Okay, now to be council president, is it you're eligible?
So every council person is eligible, but the way the council president typically votes is whoever has the majority of the votes will become the council president. So in 2012, when I was first elected to the council, I was a Democrat. The Democrats had control of the council. I believe it was 7-2. John Lanny was elected president, and I was elected vice president by my peers. So the first term of the council, I was the vice president of the council.
So at the time, Councilman Lanny actually received more votes than you?
No, I had more votes than him citywide, but he had more votes to be president than I would have had because I was a new council person.
Oh, I got you.
And John was returning as the prior council president, so it would have been amazing if I could have won my first term as council and then unseated the sitting council president. Right. I did beat him in citywide votes, though. I came in first.
How did that night feel? Do you remember that night when you won?
It was kind of surreal. Because when I lost by such a close margin that it was very difficult. And because when you lose by a small amount, we're talking 12,000 votes versus 11,950. We're talking a small number.
Right.
And when you lose, that's like, oh man, wow, all that work.
10 more blocks.
10 more blocks. I could have made 20 more phone calls.
Yeah.
But then when I won, I won by like 2,000 votes.
Wow.
I beat John Laney by like 1,800 votes. It was insane. I'm like, whoa. So
what do you think happened there?
I think we worked so hard to get the message out that we really cared about Cranston that people resonated and said, you know what? He was here 2 years ago. He just barely won, and I was in the last spot in the ticket. So if you think about the way the citywide works, you have 6 people running for 3 spots, and your ballot position means a lot. And I was at the very bottom, so I had to basically work my way up to be in the top 3. When I ran the second time, I had a better ballot position, and all the hard work we put in. I think those things just combined to have everyone say, like, he's the right man for the job.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. So it was kind of surreal.
Yeah. What have you learned in public service?
The one thing I've learned is I always live by 2 kind of main rules. The first rule is if it's right for the city, you do it. Doesn't matter, there's going to be groups of people that might not like what we're doing, but if in aggregate it's the right thing to do for Cranston, then you do it.
Right.
And the second thing I've learned is if you can see what you did in the Providence Journal the day after you did it and still be proud of your decision, then it's probably the right decision.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
Those 2 things have kind of always been the hallmark of how I lead and my leadership style. If it's not good for Cranston, number one, I'm not going to do it. And if I can see it in print and I'm not going to agree with that decision, or my mother's going to see it and say, wow, I can't believe my son did that, then I know it's not the right decision. And that's kind of how I judge things. And people always ask me, like, how did you come to that decision? I say, well, I weighed it several ways. It's good for Cranston, and I think it's the right decision.
Very good.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you think can improve in the mechanics of city government?
We have a lot of red tape. I've noticed in the 8 years I've been on the council that, if you have a decision that needs to happen, there's a lot of little things you have to do. Now, some of them are needed, granted, when you're talking zoning and ordinances, but there's a lot of little things you have to do if you wanted to open a business. And there's no real good portal to get that information to someone who's trying to figure out what to do. I think the city employees do a great job. I look at this building that we're sitting in, senior services.
Yes.
How many seniors that live in the city don't know this exists? And how do we market those things? This is something that's great for all Cranston residents. And there's a lot of little pockets of things like the senior center across the city that we don't really advertise, market, or people don't know or can't research. So that's one of the things. And we've worked to solve that, working with the administration to try to build a better website, put more information, be more transparent, put the meetings that we're doing up on the web, things like this. So I think we're all working to make the city more transparent, but it's tough moving a city. It takes time, and I think the most frustrating thing that you see is everything takes time.
Takes time, right? Now, have you experienced a situation where, like you were telling me at the beginning, that when you were just a resident, you wanted your pothole fixed? Tell me a story from a resident calling you about not necessarily a pothole, but an issue they had.
Oh, sure. We get as council people, we get phone calls all the time. We get emails, Facebook message. If there's a way to get a message to me, I think a constituent has found it, which is amazing. I mean, I'll get Facebook messages, Instagram DMs. I rarely get an Instagram DM, and I'll who DM me on Instagram? Because typically Instagram is just for people to see pictures of my kids.
Yeah.
And then I'll open it up, and it's a constituent saying, hey, I didn't have your phone number. We're not Facebook friends, but I saw you on Instagram, so I have a problem.
This is how I'm reaching.
It's become amazing. So people will find you, and sometimes you can help them. Most of the time you really try, unless it's something we just don't do.
Right.
I get a lot of phone calls. Blueberry Drive, there's a street in Western Cranston that people use as a cut-through. They paved it, and the residents actually said it's getting worse as a cut-through. So we worked with the police department to get details and put up the sign that shows how fast they're going, to write some tickets if they need to. More of a police presence to kind of drop the speed level on there. I get calls all the time for potholes. We forget the city out there and fill them. Lights not working, LED lights needing to be replaced. The city does a good job of catching up on those things when we give them to them. I say the one thing that they're always behind on is street signs, because I think we're so behind on street signs, and we have 2 great people over in the highway department that spend all day building stop signs and road signs, but funny how many people just steal them or they fall down and they just.
And I noticed the fonts are larger now, right?
The fonts are larger, so they've changed it to conform with the new rules, and the fonts are larger. The signs are all reflective, so they're doing a lot of new innovative things. But those things take time to change all those signs. So when somebody calls up and says, hey, you need a street sign, it's like, well, we're backlogged on street signs because they're trying to update all the fonts. So we do a lot of work to keep people in the loop, to make sure they know what's going on. I would say as I've been on the council members have gotten a lot better at it. We receive calls, and the administration has been fantastic. Working with the mayor's administration has been really, really great. He is a very responsive mayor. His staff is very responsive. I know Jeff, the executive director of this center, was working in the administration at City Hall before that. He was very, very good at getting back to residents and responding to things that we gave him. His replacement, Leanne Zarella, has been equally as effective. The prior deputy director of administrations were good, Carlos Lopez, and then you had Robin Schutt. And don't forget,
Perillo now.
Director Perillo now, but everybody we've had has been very responsive. The mayor hires some good people.
So it's a team effort, right?
It really is. It's got to be collaborative.
And the council, yeah.
And even the Democrats, I tell someone said to me when I first became council president 3 years ago, well, they don't respond to my emails. I said, well, just CC me on it. They're not going to respond to me.
Right.
And if you CC me on it, that means we've already talked about it, and it's fine. You're helping a constituent.
That's right.
And my answer to the administration is always, well, if you don't do it, then that person's just going to call me, and then I'm going to have you fix it anyway. So we've tried to take the politics out of it, and the mayor was really good at doing that when he was the mayor. But you get pockets inside city government that are just, well, that person's not from our party, so I'm not going to do it. And I think that over the years has really kind of gone the way of the buffalo, faded away out of existence. There was some animosity back in the day when Democrats ruled the city council. Heck, I was one of them that ruled the city council for 20 years.
Interesting that you say that. When did that moment come for you? Switching parties.
It was weird. It became less about the party and more about the people. I was asked to do something I just didn't really agree with, and it was more like, well, we want to do this for the party, and I'm like, well, that's not the right move for the people. The thing I told you before. That for me, it's about what's right for Cranston is what I'm going to do. So I kind of voted against the thing that they wanted me to vote for. And then I would vote for things that they wanted me to vote against.
And that put a mark on you.
And that put a mark on me. And really, it was about doing what I felt was right.
So it's really more of to show independence.
Yeah.
You wanted to move
forward. I wanted to move forward. I wanted to do the right thing. And if, at the time, the Democrats were like, well, you can't agree with Mayor Fung. But what he's doing is right.
Right.
So if he's doing something right, then we should agree with him. We should all agree with him.
Right.
And I was like, well, no, we'll defeat it, and then we'll just repackage it, and we'll put it through ourselves. I'm like, well, that's not.
Yeah, it's almost
really
like that
effective.
thing, after a presidential election, no matter who ends up winning,
you got to work with the people who are there.
We want to wish him or her great luck, because if they are successful, our country is successful.
Yeah.
So at the city level, the same thing.
Same thing.
Whoever becomes mayor, him or her, we wish him the best because then the city's going to progress.
Right. And then as time went by, some of the, legacy council people hit term limits and didn't run again. You got some new people in there who are really like-minded like me that say, you know what, I get it. It doesn't matter what party you are. We're all here to work together to make the city better. It doesn't matter who came up with the idea. If it's a good idea, we're going to go forward with it. And even the administration, we have ideas that come forward over the last 4 years that are driven by the opposition, but they're not the opposition anymore. They're just council people like me.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you said you thought about being an accountant, but you said, no, I want to do something more exciting than that. However, one of the big pieces of city government is the budget. Talk about accounting there. Tell us a little bit about how that whole thing works.
Yeah, and the difference for me between accounting and finance is finance people think 3 to 5 years out. Accountants typically think what happened last week. I gotta look at my taxes for last year, and that's the thing about being a budget analyst, because I was budget analyst.
I never heard that distinction.
And that's really the difference for me. That accountants like to look at the past, financial analysts like to look at the future, and that's what always intrigued me about being a financial analyst and a budget actual person, and as opposed to just accounting and looking backwards. Being a CPA, I wanted to look forwards. When you hire an auditor, they're a CPA and they're to audit what happened. And some of what they do thinks about what's going to happen, but
correct things.
But they're
But it's about the vision.
But I'm more of a vision, like what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. How are my decisions today going to affect the future? So that's what drove me to finance. I think that's what helps me with the budget, because I look at what we're doing today and just saying, we can afford this right now because the tax levy is this and our expense portfolio is that. What happens in next year? What happens the year after? Are we going to have to, if we pass this contract, are we going to have to raise taxes? I think I've asked Director Strom that question 16 times every time we pass a contract. I get what it's going to look like this year. What is it going to look in 5 years? How's this change going to affect the next 2 city councils? And I think that's what makes me a little different than a lot of the other city council people that are on there now. And just because I've been trained to do it.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So an ordinance, for those folks out there that may not necessarily understand, how does a piece of legislation become city law or an ordinance? How does that work?
So usually it depends what it is, but typically what will happen is someone will have an idea. Whether that idea is to, I don't know, pave a bunch of streets, build a new trash program, they will have to draft something called an ordinance. What the ordinance will do is we have this book of laws, called the city charter, and then the resulting code of ordinances. So it's a municipal code of everything the city enforces for laws. And for us to pass an ordinance, we have to change the book. And to change the book, you have to update or amend the ordinances that exist. So someone will have an idea. I'll give you a great example of one that we just passed. So Councilwoman Vargas proposed a dilapidated properties ordinance, which basically says the city will establish a task force to work with homeowners and banks if a house is in foreclosure that's really become dilapidated over time, so the city can step in and help rehabilitate that piece of property and bring it back to something that we could then resell. So this was an idea that she had that came out of Pawtucket and Providence, and we had something on our books that was a little different, but the same idea. And she looked at what we had and what they had and said, well, I want to change this. I want to make it a little more open, so we have a task force that can help do this. And we had a task force, but no one had used it since like 1996. And she felt that, I think there's a better way to do this. She partnered with the administration. She wrote an ordinance. It went through a bunch of hearings because it's something that we're changing. We had, I think, 4 ordinance committee hearings on it. We had testimony from the public. We brought in experts. We talked about this idea, and we really hammered it out to come up with something that we felt would benefit the city. The administration worked with us, and we said, okay, now we have this idea that we've all inputted our perspectives in, and we had amended the ordinance, and now we had a piece of paper, because all ordinances is really a piece of paper.
Right.
The council then votes on it in the committee. The committee then sends it to the full council. Full council will debate it again, because sometimes, not usually, but sometimes there's somebody in the full council who's not on the committee who hasn't heard about it. Then the full council will vote. They'll send it to the mayor. The mayor will review it, make sure it complies with all the city laws that he believes it will, and then he will sign it, and it goes into law.
How about state law? Do you also look at?
So state law is a fine thing. So federal law trumps state law trumps city law. So we can't violate a state law or a federal law.
So in that ordinance
we can
process,
augment it. So there, in that ordinance process, one of the things we did do, because there are some state statutes that govern the idea that Councilmember Vargas was kind of honing in on. And we looked at state law and said, okay, what does state law allow us to do? What don't they allow us to do? And we really used that to ensure that we're doing the right thing.
And what I like about your example is that Councilwoman Vargas, she's from the Democratic Party, a Democrat, and you're Republican. And you were right now describing this ordinance with such passion that you bought into the program right away.
Right away.
So you were willing to support it because, again, you just said, I'm sure you thought it was going to be good for Cranston.
Yep.
So why not support it?
And the thing is, when even talking to some of the legacy Republicans, Councilmember Favicchio has been on the council for 10 years, and he was a Republican when the Democrats had control, and they were, I don't want to say stifling, but we'll call it what it was, stifling some of the things he wanted to do. Even he thought about the things that he would see over his 10 years in the council and say, you know what, I could have used this law when I was working on a house in Garden City that had fire damage. I had sat there for 6 years. It literally took him 2 years to figure out a way to work with the bank to get the house fixed up and then resold. So he said this ordinance would have helped him solve that problem much quicker. So he bought it, and it's things like that. Like if it's good for Cranston, the council has a different vibe than it did when I first got on it. It was a lot of this, and then when I became president, it became this.
Now, you think that change is throughout the whole state, or just specifically?
I would say no. It's probably just in Cranston. I mean, look at what's going on nationally right now, and what's going on even in our state. We're an enigma. Cranston is an enigma. We all believe, and in reality, most of us are fiscal conservatives on the Republican side and social moderates. Right. We believe in spending money on the things you need to spend money on and not wasting money. But sometimes you have to help people and you have to do the right thing. I think that's what differentiates us from the Republicans you see nationally. Cranston Democrats are a different kind of Democrat. We're kind of like that Reagan-esque Democrat that, I want to help people, I want to do the right thing, but I want to make sure I live within my means. And I think that's really the vibe that we give off.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same vibe I gave off when I was a Democrat, oddly enough, that I was
I was going to say, generally speaking, Democrats in Rhode Island are what they call nationally blue dog Democrats, right? they're on the conservative side of the equation.
Yeah.
Very few are the so-called progressives, right?
They are there.
They're there.
They're there.
Which is fine, you know, and it adds to the excitement. It adds to division, you know.
I agree. It
generates dialogue.
I was a very blue dog Democrat.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny. The hardcore Democrats used to call me a Democrat in name only, and the hardcore Republicans, I think, called me a Republican in name only.
Yeah.
So I'm really that centralist, that blue dog Democrat, that you know, Reagan Republican. I want to do what's right for the city. That's always first. Party is probably third, not even second.
Now I have heard this term over and over: rainy day fund. So
Yes.
They say we have about what, 22 million. Correct me if I'm wrong.
22 million in the rainy day fund.
What does that mean?
So there's no account with 22 million.
I was going to say
we're not sitting on
we
22
have it in a Swiss bank.
We're not sitting on 22 million dollars. What it means is the asset base that we have exceeds our expenses by 22 million dollars.
Okay.
So there is some cash in our checkbook, and not really in our checkbook, in our net
Coffers?
worth. So our net worth.
Okay, net worth. Okay.
It's a good way to think about it. So like if you own a house
Yeah.
and you have savings and you have paintings, well, you can have those things, but if you're paying mortgages on them, you have a value of what they're worth and then a value of what you owe. So if you have $500,000 in value, but you have $400,000 in debt, your net worth's $100,000. That doesn't mean you have $100,000 on hand.
Liquid.
It
Correct.
just means you are worth $100,000. That's what I like to tell people the rainy day fund is built on.
Oh, okay.
So if you think about the buildings we own, the value we have in our assets, our tangible stuff, it's worth $22 million more than what we have built in for expenses.
So in reality, that helps us in which way?
So it keeps us solvent.
Yep.
Because if things did go bad, we could borrow money against the
22
value.
million. Okay.
We do have, I have to check. I haven't checked in a while. I think it's been about a year since I've looked. 6 to 7 million in cash flow at any given time, sitting in the coffers. Usually we pay bills. There are, loans that we take out to do capital projects, like the work we did in the senior center, the work we look to do in schools. So at any given time, there's that 6, 7, 8, $9 million in real cash somewhere. Because sometimes it might be in a bond account or a capital account you can't touch.
Right.
But if you think about it, having more assets gives the city the ability to remain solvent in times of difficulty. State law only allows us to raise taxes to a certain levy, 4% on the value of our city, of the value of the property currently in the city, I believe is right around $4 or $5 million. If for some reason something disastrous happened, city's self-funded right now. I know the mayor's working to think about maybe doing some catastrophic insurance, but the city funds itself in insurance. So
self-insured, right?
Self-insured. So if something terrible happens, the city has to pay like a $15 million fee, we have the money to cover it, or we have the assets to cover it. So bond rating agencies look at that and say, okay, if something catastrophic happens, the city can sustain itself.
Right.
That's why having a good, strong rainy day fund, or cumulative surplus, as what it's really called. People call it the rainy day fund, but it's really a cumulative surplus.
So the key is to maintain it or even grow it, right?
The
And
key
the only
would be to
way
grow
to
it.
do that is to have people, hopefully elected, that know what they're doing and have that vision, right?
Correct. We talk a lot about things that need to happen, and Alan has the mayor. He's done a great job in looking at to pave roads and streets, but to pave every road and street in the city of Cranston would cost upwards of $80 million.
Wow.
So we can't just go pave every road and street, because then we'd have no cumulative surplus. We'd be broke. So he's done a good job trying to rotate those fixes in. Same thing with the school buildings. For 30, 40 years, school buildings have been neglected in this state. And it was no different in Cranston.
Now, sometimes people say, here we are, the most powerful country in the world. We're giving all this money away to foreign countries. How does the federal government support cities? Or how can we tap into federal funds? How does that work?
So we have a lot of grant programs that we look at. So the federal government gives us state funding every year, and the state then trickles some funding down to cities and towns. So we do get funding for education. There are some programs that the state does have that allow us to get funding from them if we do certain things. There are grants available. So we just received a firefighter grant from SAFER, which is a federally, I can't remember what SAFER stands for, but it's a federally sponsored firefighter organization that gives grants to people to hire more firefighters. So we hired firefighters under the SAFER grant. So that takes expense off the city for the first 3 years while they're kind of becoming firefighters. And then hopefully at that point, the revenues have grown in the city because time goes by, taxes you stay stagnant, but you have more building, more construction, more commercial, and you can then afford those firefighters without an increased expense to the citizens.
You just said building. in the city, where are the areas that more building can be done?
So you have spots over, oddly enough, behind Chapel View. There's a big piece of land open over there that abuts Route 37. You have some state land, it's city land that the state has been historically using for their buildings that I think we could work to develop something in. You also have pockets of areas in the section of Cranston down by the industrial park. And then if you look at where we're sitting right now, there's a lot of little small businesses that have gone out on the corridor, on Dyer Ave, Reservoir Ave, the Triangle, a lot of empty storefronts. So that's, I think, the next step to develop. Big areas, Cranston is pretty much developed. I don't see a lot of commercial going into Western Cranston at this point. Western Cranston's pretty rural. They're building a good amount of houses, maybe too many, but the time will tell. They're selling, so people are buying them. So they can't be building too many, but it feels like they're doing a lot of development up there. As far as commercial, we sold the Printworks. That was a big piece of property that was available for commercial development. They're working to do a piece of property up on Plainfield Pike, which used to be the Save-A-Lot cold storage facility. That's becoming a cold storage facility. So I got to give props to Larry DeBoni over in the Economic Development Department. He's finding buyers, working with owners to fill a lot of these spaces up. So the ones that were empty, where they built Cadence, where the old company that Dean Warehouse became, Save-A-Lot becoming a cold storage warehouse. He's done a really good job of working with people, working with the Chamber of Commerce to fill a lot of these locations. So we are running out of commercial development. We do have some going on behind Chapel View at the old Citizens Bank building, so that they're working on now. That's probably the last big piece of developable area.
Very good, very good. So how about a message for all those seniors that are going to be graduating next year?
What I would say to you is enjoy the time you have in college now, but don't enjoy it too much. Work hard. Pick a good major that will give you a good career. Think about jobs of the future. We need a lot of STEM program people. So if you want to be a math teacher, we need those. If you want to be an engineer, we need those. Science, technology, those are really where we need people in our state and in our country to kind of grow and become jobs. We don't need any more lawyers. A few of you can become lawyers. Don't need lots of lawyers. We need a lot of people to do STEM. So that would be my gift to the graduates coming up. And enjoy it now, because working is so much different than going to college. And I think anyone who has graduated from college will tell you it's the best 4 years of your life. Just don't make it 6 if you do get an MBA.
There you go. Council President, thank you
David.
very much. And remember, 1070 Cranston Street. Call us if you have a question. The number's right down here, and we're here to help you. 1070 Cranston Street, Cranston Department of Senior Services. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Well, folks, thank you for watching this nice episode. I hope you enjoy, especially the interview with Council President Michael Farina. See you next time. Thank you.